Well, hello and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show. And I'm delighted that we're going to go all the way over to the Tower of London to meet my very special guest, Canon Roger J. Hall. How are you, Roger?
Canon Roger J. Hall is in good form, thank you. Except I feel as if I'm a bit in competition with you this morning, Andrew.
I can hear some squawking in the back.
You can hear some squawking. I can tell you, Poppy the Raven is right outside the chapel door and making a most terrible din, so I apologise for that. The trouble is, Andrew, that our family of ravens, of which there are 6 live in the main part of the tower in groups of 2, are desperately missing our tourists. And they, you know, anybody that comes by, and Poppy, who lives near us, my wife and I have taken to giving a biscuit every now and again. And that's been fatal because now they're so intelligent, these ravens. She stands outside the door, squawking away like crackers. Give me, give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. Also, it's the time of the year when they start breeding. So, of course, they're chasing each other around the green in front of us, making this terrible din as well. So I apologise in advance if you hear lots of squawking from Poppy.
Oh, no, it's one of the things I love, Roger, about having this great sort of intimate moments with people in their living rooms and their churches and so on and so forth, is you get to see real life. And I think you get pets coming in and jumping into camera shots. You get little children wandering in, and it just makes it all real.
Yeah, well, actually, that's very interesting you should say that because during this lockdown, several of the beefeaters here have decided they will get puppies. So we now have, I don't know how many dogs walking around the moat in the morning, you know, of course, all social distance one from another, although the dogs don't seem to know about social distancing. Anyway, we've got all these puppies and dogs, and one called Nelson, one called Wellington, you know, all appropriate names. When people say to me, Roger, do you have any pets? I say, yes. We have a raven that sits outside the front door, and our house, unfortunately, twice a year gets mice because it's so old and built into the walls of the Tower of London that we get the occasional mouse pops its head up, which really upsets my wife.
Although I understand, but they always say, don't they, about London that you're never 10 feet away from a rat, isn't that right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, the Tower of London is really extraordinary because our house, which was built by, not himself, but commissioned by Henry VIII at the same time as this particular chapel that I'm recording you this with, it has a 27-foot wall. And of course, the walls in those periods were built full of rubble. And that has been a really big problem all the way around the tower. And we also have endless amounts of tunnels, which people are completely unaware of, running underneath the tower, because that's today, of course, that's where all the cabling goes and all the rest of it. And of course, these become real warrens for things like foxes. We have foxes in the amount of times I've come home and there's been a fox, the flipping fox, Mr. Fox, sitting on our front doorstep has been extraordinary. Of course, as soon as you get anywhere near them, they run off. And then the walls, of course, are full of mice. And it's just, you're absolutely right. You just have to live with this sort of thing if you live in an ancient 1,000-year-old building like I do.
No, it is quite extraordinary. And the ravens, the one we've spoken about, the ravens previously, and you say it's brilliant. Yeah. What happens? Are they successful, and where do the chicks go?
Oh, well, I'm delighted to say that Hugin and Moonen, who are in a cage in the moat, have bred, and they have successfully brought about 2 chicks this year, which is really exciting news. I think, now you have to speak to the Reagan Master to be absolutely certain about this, but I think what happens is that we have an arrangement with people who breed ravens down in Cornwall, North Wales, and in Scotland. And what we do is if we breed them here, they go eventually down to those particular places. If we need to bring one back, then what happens is with the hope, I think the intention is that should anything happen to one of the regulars here, then we can bring back a raven that's been was bred here, actually within the Tower of London. Now, I know that's the theory. I'm not quite sure whether that's how it works. So Chris rather, sorry, if you're listening to this, Chris Gate this morning, who's the Raven Master, and I've got this wrong, I apologise. But we are very excited because they are breeding.
One day and talk about the ravens and the possible pilgrimage that the little chicks make back to the tower. That'd be rather fun. And talking
exactly.
I mean, you've done a number of pilgrimages to the Holy Land and so forth. And I understand you have plans for some even this year.
We have indeed, yeah. Since I've come here, I thought what we might try and do fairly regularly is go on a pilgrimage, take a group of 20 people from the chapel community here away. And so one year we might do something quite big, like go to the Holy Land, or we went to Rome. We went to, this church is named St. Peter ad Vincula. So I took a group of people to Rome, and we went to visit the church of St. Peter ad Vincula and visit the chains that are supposedly the chains. Mind you, they were about this size, absolutely enormous great chains. Those sort of things that I think they must have tied up the QE2 with. So anyway, that's a slightly aside. But also in between that, locally, it's plenty, you know, our own country has the most wonderful Christian history about it. So Iona, one of the cradles of Christianity in the United Kingdom, I took a group, we had the most wonderful pilgrimage there. And not only did we visit the Abbey, but we went out on one of the rarest days in beautiful sunshine to Fingal's Cave, you know, out in the sea. Oh, it was just wonderful. So yes, we do a sort of local one year, or something UK based, and try and do something bigger the following year. And last year, as part of our 500th anniversary celebrations of the chapel, I'd organised a pilgrimage to Jordan, to go particularly to Petra, where interestingly, of the 20 of us who were going, there's only one other person had actually been there. I've been to the Holy Land a lot, but never been to Jordan, and nor's my wife. So we were really looking forward to that. But of course, with the pandemic and the COVID-19, that was cancelled. So we rescheduled it for this year, and we're supposed to be going in September. So might be able to do a recording from Petra for you.
Oh,
live broadcast.
Amazing.
From there.
Tell me then, Roger, why are pilgrimages important?
Pilgrimages, I think, have always been historically important. I mean, you can start in a very simple way by saying every time people make an effort to come to church on Sunday, they make a small pilgrimage to come together and to worship God. And historically, of course, the great centres, the great birthplaces of faith and religion, whether it's Mecca for the Muslims, whether it's Rome for Christians, or Jerusalem for Christians, these have always been incredibly important places for people, at least once perhaps in their life, to go. You only got to think of the Canterbury Tales and how people, you know, made their pilgrimage en route to Canterbury. And so people, in my life, I've been fortunate enough to make a number of pilgrimages, both local, as I've said, to places, even just to go and visit where Durham, and go and visit St Cuthbert, and then do St Cuthbert's Way, and follow the route that Cuthbert was taken from Holy Island to Durham in the, you know, when the Saxons are our friends from over the water in this Brexit time, we have to be very careful what we say, you know, came over and decided to rob and sack the monasteries, to go and do that pilgrimage route, through to going, for me, like many Christians, going to the Holy Land, to be there and to walk on the places where Jesus walked, and to experience something of what it was like to be there, is incredibly important. And going to the Holy Land, of course, is particularly important because most pilgrims will tell you that it's wonderful to go to Jerusalem and the Holy Sepulchre and places like that in East and West Europe, but it's a massive big city today. Go to Galilee and you almost feel you're stepping back in time. Every pilgrim that I've been with to Galilee, last time I took some people out on the Sea of Galilee really early in the morning, in the peace and in the quiet, as the sun was rising over the lake, and the lake was as calm as a mill pond, and you sort of we glided out into the lake, and then we stopped, and then we read the story of Jesus, you know, going out onto the Sea of Galilee with the fishermen, and then the storm erupting and all that. So it's just the most amazing. It brings the Bible to life. I suppose that's the bottom of it, what most people say when we come back. It brings those Bible stories to life in a way that is it's just wonderful after you've experienced something of being to the Holy Land, or going to Rome, or going to Cyprus, or some of these places where Christianity's had a foothold at the very beginning of time.
And it is quite extraordinary, isn't it? It is bringing, like the Bible, they bring all those stories to life, walking in the footsteps where that particular adventure, that particular tale, that particular story took place. It does make a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, people. On my WhatsApp, the picture, you know, we all have a little picture in the left-hand corner on our WhatsApps. The The picture there is of me sitting on the bank of, on the Mount of Olives, looking straight over Kidron Valley to the Temple Mount, with the golden dome of the Temple Mount there. And that still, as my children, my family, my wife, my family, and my close friends will still tell you, is for me one of the most amazing views in the world. I get quite emotional when I sit on that wall, because actually of the Christian story, so much happened between the Mount of Olives, the Kidron Valley, and Jerusalem, imagining it as a much smaller city than we see it today, of course, and all the events that took part from Jesus going there very early on in his ministry. We think, in John's Gospel, he visited about 7 times, and it was very important to him. And of course, then there was, his trial, his crucifixion and his resurrection, and all that's around that particular part, and it's just incredibly powerful. And sitting on the Mount of Olives, some of those olive trees are 2,000 years old. They are 2,000 years old. You put your hand on an old olive tree and you think, Jesus might have done this, 2,000 years ago. It's extraordinary.
It is.
And then you get told off, do not touch, don't touch them.
Yes, you want to make sure about that. But you mentioned Durham. I as you know, I went to university there to read law, and I was at St. Chad's, and every morning I'd be woken up with the wonderful bells of the cathedral.
Yeah. Durham is, in terms of this pilgrimage again, I trained at Lincoln, but part of my early childhood was in Durham, and people often say to me, of the 43 or so cathedrals, which are your favourite cathedrals? And I always say, well, of course, there are 2 contrasting ones. I love Lincoln from its femininity. It's built by St. Hugh. It's very French. It's got, all the Chartres expression, beautiful glass and all the rest of it. Then go to Durham. You couldn't see a more masculine, it was built to keep those pesky Scots out, and to tell them who's in charge. But also, it stood through everything, even through, our period of the Commonwealth, even when Cromwell, as you probably know from your time in Durham, all he ever used it for was to put his horses in, but it didn't really make much of a difference to the place, really, because it's so majestic and sits there on that hill. And then you think about St. Cuthbert's Chapel at the end, and then all those wonderful northern saints that are worth exploring in pilgrimage. Bede, Chad, as you say, Cuthbert, all these people, just amazing, just absolutely a real heart of Christian pilgrimage and the Christian message.
And it does, as you say, it brings it all to life when you
wonderful part of the world.
You're walking in the footsteps and you're walking in the halls and things like that. People who are looking at this and thinking, we would love to go on a pilgrimage, Roger's excited us so much, what could they themselves do? They should approach their own churches? What should they do?
Well, I think most churches and dioceses often have pilgrimage groups going to various places. So that's certainly one thing you can do. This day with modern technology, there's so much online. That's the other thing. If you want to go on pilgrimage to the Holy Land, you can just go online. There's an organization called McCabe's Travel, which has done pilgrimages to the Holy Land for years and years and years. And they're well known, and they're known throughout the Holy Land. Land, Sea and Water also do stuff in the Holy Land as well. There are books you can go to. Of course, I'm not supposed to name any bookshops on this, but any mainline bookshop. Let's leave it as simple as that. And the ones we're talking about, and I'm sure that's true all over the world. We'll have a section where you can do. You can pick up pilgrimage walks, and they're often the pilgrimage walks in books are in the part of the bookshop where they're doing walks generally. So whether you're doing Land's End to John O'Groats or the Pilgrim Way or whatever, there are plenty of books on this. You can also explore very easily, I think, these days. For example, one of the things I intend to do when I retire is I've been on a bike, believe it or not, with a load of army chaplains to Compostela, but I've never walked it. And I'd like to walk that route. And there are 3 routes to Compostela. There's the main route, there's another one, but there's another one which is often overlooked. And that's a much quieter route. And again, there are plenty of books. You just go online, go to bookshop, walks to Compostela. You can do part of it, you can do all of it. And that's that's a wonderful thing. And there have been some recent very good television programs with groups of celebrities who have walked various pilgrimage routes. There's one on recently about a group of celebrities who walked all the way to Istanbul and went through some most amazing countryside, and not only sort of Christian history, but ordinary, main European history, as well, exploring wonderful countryside and getting soaked, as is often the case,
Yeah, it is quite extraordinary. And Istanbul's an amazing place. Every time I sort of think of Istanbul, I remember the song with Istanbul, not Constantinople. And so,
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, just steeped in history. And these pilgrim routes, see, they're all part of ancient pilgrim routes. The Compostela one, the one to Istanbul, the one to Rome, the one to Jerusalem, they're all there still, and actually they're being rediscovered. More and more people, whether they're Christian or not, want to share the experience of something that pilgrims did, for year in, year out. Apparently there's a new one beginning to be explored right across Russia, where the sort of like the sort of runs parallel with the Trans-Siberian Railway. I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure what I'll be doing that, but it's a wonderful experience. And I think something that you said just a moment ago, walking in the steps of some of these people is just an extraordinary feeling. And certainly in the Holy Land, to have walked where Jesus walked, to have been where the disciples were, to have felt the atmosphere of the nation, Palestinian and Jew, is just extraordinary.
I mean, you mentioned Russia. I went along, as you probably remember, for Sochi for the Winter Games for the Olympics, and we landed in Moscow. We were supposed to fly to Krasnodar, which is a 45-minute flight, but the weather was so bad that we had to go over by train. And it was like a 7-hour train journey. Yeah. One of the most glorious journeys, because the trains were much older than you might imagine. Yeah. And you were steeped in history on the way, and a pilgrimage in the same sort of way. Yeah. It's going those footsteps, seeing how long it might have been. And imagine it brings history alive, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things another thing, on your bucket list sort of thing, my middle daughter, Harriet, went with her husband to India at one point, and they traveled on one of these trains to Pondicherry, which took them 3 days. I can't remember where they set off from. And it was one of these trains where she brought these amazing pictures about people, hanging out the windows on the roof of the train, on the, children on the side, clinging on for hours and hours and hours. And then she had this little recording of them all bursting into song and singing as they went along on this train to Pondicherry. And some of them are going to the Mother Teresa Center in Pondicherry, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, wonderful, amazing.
Fantastic stuff. Well, we'll get you back to talk more about pilgrimage, but for now, Roger, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. God bless and take care. Bye.
So thank you again to Canon Roger J. Hall, MBE, for being my special guest and talking about pilgrimages. If you'd like to be a guest or want to find out more about any of the subjects that we've been talking about, write to me at guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com. Don't forget, you can follow me at Andrew Eborn, @OctopusTV, and subscribe on all of the usual channels. It's been a real delight. Thank you very much again for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.